Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time again for another episode of Living Hope, a weekly journey designed to provide hope, inspiration, and education for those living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it on a daily basis. Or in the case of our guest and our host today, how they deal with it on a yearly basis, a multi-yearly basis. This is a hopeful story here.
Yeah, we have a total of 43 years between the two of us.
Wow, look at that. When you started with your original diagnosis was 23 years ago.
Right, in 2002.
And the projected survival rate was pretty bleak.
It was 4% at that time.
Now it's up to what, 10, 12?
We're at 13.
13,
yes,
okay.
Yes,
so it's still, it's dramatically improved, but not nearly what people would hope for.
Not at all. No, we're way low below most survival rates for cancer, so we really need to build that up. And we're celebrating this year, this month, since June is National Cancer Survivor Month. So we want to celebrate our survivors and let people know there is hope out there, and there are survivors out there. So,
like your guest today, and you.
Exactly, like our guest, Wes Semple, who is a 20-year pancreatic cancer survivor, and he has turned his diagnosis into a lifelong mission of advocacy, and he supports others affected by this disease. So, Wes, it's really nice to have you. Thank you for coming all the way from Pittsburgh. So it was good to see you, and you look great.
Thank you, and I'm glad you sent the invitation and be able to share my story with you and your viewers.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing. Can you tell us just a little bit about you before the cancer? What were you doing, or what was life like before?
Well, I spent 41 years as a high school teacher at a local high school, and actually I was also an adjunct at a local small Catholic university in the area. I spent 35 years teaching there. Wow. And I have a wife and a son, and live north of Eckershire Stadium, where the Steelers play.
Are you a Steelers fan, or should I not ask?
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have you. And going back, you were diagnosed back in March 2005. What were the first signs that you felt that something wasn't quite right?
It was real strange. I was sitting eating lunch at my high school. The nurse was sitting to my right. I looked over to the left, and she goes, "Do that again." And I did it, and she goes, "You got a yellow spot in your eye." And there was a tiny little yellow spot in the corner of my eye. She says, "Come over to my office." Went over to her office, and she says, "Call your family doctor." So I called the family doctor and told them what she had said to me. And they said, "We want you to come as soon as you leave school, come to the office." So I went over to the office, which was about 10 minutes away, went in. They said, "We're going to do a bunch of blood work." I said, "Fine." They did blood work and other stuff. And that was it. And I went home. That weekend was really busy. And I went to school on Monday. It was Holy Week. We only were going to have 3 days. And I just didn't feel right, but it was a busy weekend. So I decided I was going to take 2 days off. And I took the second Tuesday off. About 10 o'clock, my phone rings. The doctor's office says, "Pack a bag, go to the hospital." And I said, okay. So we went out to the local hospital, and they checked me in and started doing all kind of stuff and said, "Okay, you're going to have a test tomorrow on Wednesday." And they did an ERCP. And when I was still downstairs, they were up there talking to my wife, arranging my surgery. Never mentioned cancer the whole time. And so Thursday, one of the surgeons came in, introduced himself, and he said, "Well, we'll see you tomorrow about noontime." And so Friday actually was Good Friday, and went in, and two surgeons, 6.5, 7-hour surgery, started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, went into the early evening. And when they were done, they talked to my wife, and they never mentioned cancer. And so I was in a room, and then a couple of days later, 5 o'clock in the morning, some doctor walked into my room and stood at the foot of bed and told me, he said, "You have pancreatic cancer." And that's how I found out about it. Nice bedside manner. I have no idea who the doctor was.
Wow. You said surgery. So what type of surgery was it that you had before you were
I had the
told?
Whipple.
Before you were told that it was pancreatic cancer?
Never told I was potentially pancreatic cancer. I had what's called the bucket handle. type, because they can do that, or a triangle, or straight up and down. There's different ones. And so that's how I found out. My wife came in and I said, I got pancreatic cancer. And of course, she was shocked, and so I was too. And I was there and for 20 some days in the hospital. I was in the hospital room for a number of days. Then they moved me to a rehab floor.
I'm just surprised how quickly things moved, and that you had no clue that the operation was for pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, and I think they had an idea, but they wanted to wait for blood work and pathology to be approved before they really told me officially.
Well, the way things move so quickly, how did you and your wife and your family handle that? I mean, at least I had a little bit of time to kind of, swallow things before I had to start my treatment. I had a couple of days, but it sounds like you just went right in and wham, bam, thank you.
After I got out of the hospital, ended up going into treatment. I was getting chemo and I was getting radiation. And we did that 5 days a week for 30 days, Monday through Friday. Had the weekend off, and it wasn't bad, but the only thing that got me the first time, the doctor said, the oncologist said, now, you might throw up at 8 o'clock tonight. And so we were doing something, had dinner, it was in June, and was out in my yard. All of a sudden I felt real strange, looked at my watch, and it was 2 minutes to 8. And all of a sudden I got really strange, and I hurried up and ran in the house into the bathroom, and at 8 o'clock I threw up. So he knew something. And then he goes, good. And I'm thinking, you want me to throw up all the time? He goes, now insurance will let me give you the super strong anti-nausea medication. So I had to check the box with the insurance company to prove the other one. And 5 days a week, I was going back and forth doing all that. And after that, we just started normal follow-ups, if you know what I mean, every so often, an appointment or blood work. And then over time, it slowly starts stretching more and more apart. In other words, instead of every couple of weeks, maybe every month and that stuff. And checkups all the time.
How did you stay mentally and emotionally grounded during this? This is pretty intense.
They had a psychologist in the cancer center. And I saw the psychologist, and we talked about all kind of things, and we talked about what could happen and everything. And she even said, is there something you would like to do if you're terminal? She didn't use a terminal, but if things were going downhill and it would be terminal. And I said, well, I was a social studies geographer teacher, and I said, I'd like to go stand on the Great Wall of China. And so she said, okay. And she said, no, you better do that if that happens. And that never happened, never got to China, of course. And right now, I'm a 20-year survivor. And I attribute all that to the original surgeons and oncologists that I had.
Yeah, I'm just still really taken back by how quick everything moved for you, because that's not generally the story that I hear. So I'm glad that they moved so quickly. I'm just really taken back that more wasn't explained to you or talked to you about. Or did they even tell you what the Whipple was and what the outcome would be and how your life might change with that?
Yeah. We're going to do it, and this is when we're going to do it. And that was it. And of course, then after learned about have to watch my diet, and I was going to have these other treatments and everything else, and spelled everything out after the diagnosis.
You shared that you did see a psychologist during this time.
Yeah.
Was there a turning point, and how did she help you, or how did they help you live a little bit more intentionally?
It was just how we talked about things, and it's kind of hard to remember all the little things, but
Right.
She sort of gave you pointers like live for the moment, live for the day, set a little goal type of thing so that you could, achieve something, and just keep working and looking forward more than anything else. And with my wife and my son, and with my doctors. They all helped me achieve the goal.
Well, you said you didn't make it to the Wall of China, but is there something else that you've done instead of that, within placement of that?
No, but the only thing probably would replace it, I knew I had to get to 5 years. That seemed to be the goal. They said, if you can get to 5 years, we think you'll be okay. And when it was 5 years, I went to my first PanCan meeting in DC. And it was about 25 or 30 of us there to lobby Congress. And if you know what it was like at the end, 25 or 30 was a drop in the bucket. When I think the last time we were there was something like, wasn't about 500 people or something.
I think the last count I got was like somewhere around 100, a little more. As far as survivors, we had a large number of others. The whole thing was a large number. You're right.
Yeah, and also too, after that, I went to the second Purple Stride in Pittsburgh, and I was the only survivor there that year. And when I went to register, they said, "Who are you walking in memory of?" And I said to the lady, "I'm walking for myself," and I think I could have knocked her over with my finger. The look I got on her face in that, and she goes, "You're a survivor." And the next year there was another survivor there. The next year, after my third year, it was back to me. I was the only survivor, and most of the time, except there was a few years of conflicts, I've always been to Purple Stride here in Pittsburgh.
How did you feel on your first one when you found out you were the only survivor there? How did that feel?
It felt odd, but in my own memory, it was like, okay, I'm the only one. I know how bad it is. And I was still, dealing with the issues, but I didn't deal negative. It was like, I'm here, I'm walking around. And so it was just a matter of that. And a little tidbit, backtracking, 1999, have you ever heard of the Widowmaker with your heart?
Yes.
I survived a Widowmaker. I had open heart surgery. I had a double bypass. And one night I had a pulmonary embolism that almost killed me. A blood clot broke loose from my leg and got stuck between my heart and my lung. And so I recovered in 1999 from having all that. And at the same time, I ended up being a cardiac volunteer at the local hospital for years, talking to patients after open heart surgery, telling them there is life after this. And mentally, I felt the same way with pancreatic cancer.
Well, you really are a survivor. You've survived way more than a lot of people, so congratulations on that. But can I take it back to Advocacy Day? What was your first Advocacy Day like?
It was sort of strange. There was like about 30 people there, and we were talking about what we were going to do, like we did before. You go up to Capitol Hill, and you would go and talk to senators and Congress people and tell them about pancreatic cancer. And it was sort of strange. There's this little group. We went up on a school bus, and we had appointments. And I remember going in talking to some of the congressmen and senators of what we were asking them to do to help fund pancreatic cancer research.
How do you feel they responded to you?
Most of them were, I call, more neutral than anything. And politicians, they don't want to say too much one way or the other.
Right, they don't afraid of commitment, right?
Yeah, but they were kind. They weren't nasty or anything else. So,
comparing that Advocacy Day with the last one that you attended, you said where there was quite a large number. How was the feeling? Was it any different? Did you feel any different or get any different vibes from anybody?
I felt something was different because my local congressman, who I had, when he got elected, he had his local office like a couple miles from my house, and he had an open house. And I went, and as other people introduced me, said, "Who are you?" And Wes Semple. And I said, "Oh, you get used to this face." I said, "I'm going to be here going after research money for pancreatic cancer." And it was like, okay. And he says, "I'll tell you my story." He says, "I'm a survivor of appendix cancer." And so he says, "So I understand cancer." And he was very supportive for the few years he was in office. And anytime he saw me in the community, he always stopped me and asked me, "Wes, how are you doing?" And the local 4th of July parade, I'd be on the sidelines. I'd stand up. He'd spot me, come running over, shake my hand. "Wes, how are you doing?" And everything. And a little side note, I went to visit his office, and we're sitting there, and his aide is conducting the meeting, and we're all introducing. And I said, "The congressman's a good friend of mine." He said, "Oh, he is." And yeah, and of course it was that yeah, sure, he really knows who you are, type of thing. And his private office door was behind her, so she was sitting opposite me. Comes out, and he gets over by me, and I was near the door, and he stops and goes, "Wes, how are you?" Comes over, shakes my hand, and is making a big fuss over me. And she's sitting over there with this stupid look on his face, and I'm smiling right back to her like, I don't lie to people. And then he said, I got to go to a meeting, and away he went.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a good experience, and that was putting her there in her place a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah. And so it was just one of those funny things, but I thought, I'm going to tell her. I know him personally.
Well, I'm glad you did. Your wife, Susan, has been by your side every step.
Yes.
How important is and was her support to your healing and your outlook?
Oh, big support, because she went with me and would take extra notes, or she would be listening, or she might bring something up that she noticed or something, or how to deal with this. And she's done that the whole time with me. And actually, I always, when the original oncologist was going to kick me out, I said, "No, you're not." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I want to have an appointment once a year for blood work." And for the past 19 years, I had an appointment every December, and he did blood work for me. And people go, "He did it?" And I said, "Yes." I had just told him I wanted that extra assurance all the time.
Yeah, it's important because unfortunately, pancreatic cancer has a high occurrence rate. So it's something we want to catch early. And if that blood test will help, I don't know that alone, we need other diagnostic testing, obviously. But if something is out there that makes you feel more comfortable, then why, wouldn't he want to do it? But I'm glad you insisted in that you're keeping that up.
Yes, but insisting on that brings me to the other part of my story. I went on December 2 years ago, and we had some blood work done. And one of the blood works, which I have no idea what it means, or that never was out of range. My CEA blood work was out of range, and it only is in range about like 0 to I think 5 or 6, some small number. And he said, "Well, we'll do some blood work again." And the CEA was up a point or two. "We'll do it again." It was up a point or two. And to shorten the story, I had a recurrence of my cancer. Took a long time and lots of scans and everything. Had a little nickel-sized tumor develop on my pancreas, which meant back into treatment. And during the past 24, not 94, 24, I had chemo and radiation. And right now I'm having a scan coming up on the 16th of this month. We've had scans, and all my prior scans and all my blood work are back in the normal range again. And so my little buddy decided to come back and visit me. He must have got lonely somewhere.
Well, as long as he doesn't do any more damage to you, we're good. And it sounds like you're fighting, and you, like I said, you look really well. And Are you still doing treatment now, or are you done with all your treatment for now?
All the treatment was in the summer, and as my oncologist said, we're going to kick your butt. And I said, okay. And I said, I only have two questions. I said, what's they said, what that? I'm assuming I'm going to lose my hair. And he goes, sure, you're going to lose your hair. And I said, second, and you know me before this, I pointed to my mustache, which used to be a handlebar mustache. And am I going to lose this? And he goes, yes. And my wife says, I've never seen him without it. and he and his assistants are like looking. My wife goes, no, I've never seen him without his handlebar mustache. And I did lose the curls, and it has not come back. And so people look at me now, and they think I still have it. And then they go, wait a minute. I go, yes, there's no handlebar. Well, what happened? So I've told them that.
Yeah, well,
but it's a matter that, that's why I always wanted that blood work.
and you were right to keep doing what you were doing. And I have to tell you, you were well known through the advocacy circle as the man with the handlebar mustache, and we always, looked for you, and that was your pretty much your trademark. But I'm just happy you're here, and I'm sorry that you lost your mustache. But to me, it's a small price to pay because you are here, and you may not feel different. You may feel differently. I hope not, but. It's easy to say. I mean, I remember thinking when, somebody would say, I've lost my hair. I'm like, well, it's just hair. It'll grow back. Until I had my first fistful of hair, then I truly understood what they were talking about. So, but again, you look great. And thank you for talking about the reoccurrence. I know I didn't want to push that because I know it's not an easy subject, but I think you needed to talk about it because people need to know that yes, we have a reoccurrence, but you can survive that as well. So congratulations on that. And have you returned to teaching or what are you doing now?
I've been retired for good numbers, but I'm going to put a little plug in.
Yes, the book. Thank you. I was going to get there, but please, yes, talk about the book.
Pancreatic Cancer Action Network contacted me and said, do you want to be interviewed for a book? And I said, sure, I'll do whatever, because I know what the whole idea was, that to publicize pancreatic cancer and that. And this is the book, How to Survive Pancreatic Cancer. And in there, of course, is my story. And the irony of it, this is from people that live in Texas. And when I talk to them before it, they go, oh, I know area code 412. They're from Allegheny County originally, and it's their story, but inside of it is a whole bunch of stories of people who have survived, that funds are going to the doctor's hospital in Texas, Dr. Say, who used to be in Pittsburgh, that was their surgeon, and going to PanCan to promote pancreatic cancer research and the pancreatic cancer stories.
So one of the authors is also a pancreatic cancer survivor?
The wife is, yes.
Okay. And could you give us the name of the book again? How
to Survive Pancreatic Cancer.
And the author? I can't read it, so if you could say the author.
Okay, their last name is Stough, Lisa and Robin, Stough.
And we'll look forward, I'll definitely get it and look forward to reading it, but also catching up on what your story, what you were able to say. You've said there is a reason you're still here. What do you believe that reason is?
I think part of it is what I did after my open heart surgery, and that giving back to people. And being a teacher, I always loved doing stuff. And what got me started was after my open heart, that I could go back and I could help people get over open heart surgery and survive it, in which I did with my other little issues related to it. And after pancreatic cancer when I found out about the first walk that I went to, that's when we started doing things here in Pittsburgh. And then they started advocacy days in DC. I felt if I can go and say, here I am, there is life after this. And, but this is what you need to do. Be aware and speak up for yourself, and, find the right doctors.
And did the PanCan, did their patient services help you find a doctor, or did you already have one before you met PanCan?
Yeah, I had that. I didn't even know about PanCan until that said after my surgery was not that summer, and with the walk here in Pittsburgh that I went to. That's how I found out about Pancan, was seeing an advertisement for a walk.
And you talk to other pancreatic cancer survivors as well and give them hope and inspiration?
Yeah, we just had the walk here. Of course, you had your walk there, and there's a survivor tent, and I'm usually there, and we were talking to different people, and people at the table, the survivors are off away from the table so you can talk. They pointed somebody over my way, and it was a young man with a full beard, and he had one of those fold-up strollers with a maybe 3 or 4 year old, and the wife was there with somebody in arms, maybe 1 or 2 years old. And I introduced myself to him, and I said, I'm a 20-year survivor. And the look on his face, his mouth dropped open, and he couldn't believe he was talking to somebody like me. But I didn't get a chance to talk to him because all of a sudden they brought all the survivors over to the stage. Now, right now, get over all the survivors. And I can't remember, but we had an awful lot of survivors here in Pittsburgh at the walk this year. And there's a bunch of us that are 10, 15, 20-year survivors.
That's amazing. You said because your first walk there, you were the only survivor, and now to see that many, how did that make you feel?
Amazing that it's happened, that we got that many this past year.
And to have so many in the double digits? That's,
Yes.
Past 5 years?
Oh, yeah, there's a bunch of them, because there's a whole bunch of them that are in 10, 15 year, maybe a little higher than 15 years. And then there's weird old me at the top with 20. So,
Well, you can be as weird as you want, and you can keep getting even higher in those numbers. So let's keep that up, whatever you're doing. What message would you leave us with for other survivors or even caregivers? What message do you have?
one of the messages, you need to stay positive on your journey. Mentally, that's going to help you. That's why I saw the psychologist. I think that was another positive thing to do. And just see if you can try to get back. There are some people I know that are very reserved, that wouldn't want to get up and speak like we did in DC and do stuff, but they can do some of the other, work, with the website or some other stuff. And yes, this is a bad disease, so to speak, that there are survivors, and our numbers are going up slowly, which I wish they would go up more for survival rate. But, as they slowly go up, I'm just happy that it's going up with, potentially more survivors on this journey.
I agree. We need more survivors. We need more people out there. We need more funding. So there's a lot people can do to help with the funding, especially now that we've had the cut. And part of that is to go to pancan.org, and there's a letter there that we're asking everybody to sign to send to their senator about the funding for 2026. So thank you for everything that you're doing and that you've done, and I'm really happy to see you, and you're looking great. I do miss the mustache, but I'm just really happy to see you here and looking good. So thank you for sharing your journey with us, and we really do appreciate it. And
well, thank you. And again, if I lost the mustache but I'm alive, I'll take that as a good sign.
I agree. I'd rather have you here. So
Yes.
Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
We're so grateful to have you as our first guest this month for celebrating survivors. So thank you for being the voice of encouragement and a symbol of what it means to truly live with hope. As Long as You Speak My Name, I Shall Live Forever is dedicated to Erica Austin, a former student of Wesley's. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that too.
Well, there you have it. One more reason to tune in each and every time for our weekly journey we call Living Hope. A journey designed to provide hope, inspiration, and education for those still living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected and how they deal with it on an ongoing basis. If you'd like to share your story, please contact us. Or if you know somebody that needs more than a story, they need some help, lots of places to reach out to. Let's start with PanCan, the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. You can reach them at 877-2, the number and then the letters PANCAN. That's 877-2-PANCAN for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. For the OC Talk Radio Network, I'm Paul Roberts, thanking you once again for joining us, hoping you'll share this message with somebody else and come back by all means as we continue this journey. Right here from our studio at UCI's Beale Applied Innovation Center.